Welcome back, guys. I'm Keegan with Seared and Smoked, and today we're making a ginormous plate of beef ribs on the Rectex 700. This is going to be a good one. All right, let's take a look at these beef ribs. Look at that marbling. That's like Wagyu quality, beef there. This is not Wagyu grade. This is probably prime grade. It's from Whole Foods. You can find them on sale there for around $6 a pound usually from time to time, and usually find some good things there. And what you want to do, if you have not purchased one of these before, ask for a whole rack of short ribs or a whole rack of beef plate ribs. And generally one of those two things, they'll understand what you're talking about. But just look at the quality of this beef. It really does look amazing. Usually, as in this case, it came with a really thick fat cap. So this was not exposed when I purchased it. You have to trim it down. And there's so much fat in the beef rib, you really do not need to leave a fat cap on top. Try to just trim it off as carefully as I can. You can see there's a little, bits of silver skin in there. I've trimmed off some silver skin on the top as well after you get through the fat. And you don't necessarily need to get every single piece, but I do try to get most of it off there so you're left with something like this. We're gonna go ahead and season this up with one of my homemade brisket rubs. Nice blend of kind of Texas style salt and pepper, a little cumin, a little celery seed, a little celery salt, onion powder, garlic powder. And you want to get a nice thick layer on here. This is the more fattier the cut of meat, the more you want to season it generally, kind of cut through the fat. And we'll season up the sides of it as well. But the underside we really don't need to do a whole lot with. There's really not a lot of meat down there. All right, we got this beautiful piece of meat seasoned up. I want to show you the setup that I'm using on the Rectex 700 this time because it's a little different than my previous. Okay, so if you watched some of my previous cooks, I've usually had a water pan sitting to the left. Today we're doing a water pan with a grate over it. This is just a common kitchen grate that you'd use for like putting cookies on or something after you cook it. So I'll put a link for what that is down below in the video description if you want to purchase something like that. But it's just a really simple setup. Just poured in a beer and a half in this foil tray, and then we're gonna put our beef ribs on top. And what this will do is just help them stay moist. There's plenty of fat in beef ribs, so it shouldn't be a problem, but little insurance policy. And when I did my brisket cook, I found that the bottom of the brisket was a little more charred than I like. So by doing this, you're just protecting the bottom of the meat from any of that kind of excess heat radiating off the deflector below. And this should yield nice results for us. All right, so we got our beef ribs positioned there nicely. We got the smoker at 200 today to start out for an hour and a half, and then we're gonna bump it up to 275. Usually the high fat meats like this can take the higher temperatures fine, especially since we got the bottom protected from the heat coming off the drip tray. So should be good. I'll keep you informed of everything we do along the way, but this should be a dynamite cook. Okay, this should be pretty easy from here. We got our ribs on, and we're just gonna put them on there for an hour and a half at 200 degrees. And then we're just gonna bump it up to 275, see if we can cook these ribs a little faster today, see if we can get them done before it gets dark, which happens pretty early here in Iowa. And the high fat content meats such as this, you can usually cook at higher temperatures and not worry about drying out so much. With our water pan below, this really shouldn't be a problem. So we'll adjust as needed. I'll let you know how it goes, and we'll check back at the end of the cook to see how these ribs turn out. back, guys. It's been about 6 hours and 20 minutes since we started this cook. We did an hour and a half at 200 degrees, bumped up to 275. It's been there the rest of the time. I have not spritzed them. I have not touched them. I've peeked a little bit just for the camera, just so we can see how they're progressing, so you can see how they're progressing. And they look great. They look exactly like I want them to look. And they're getting a little soft to the touch, and they're probing above 190 degrees, which is when I would start checking doneness. So you really just want to probe it, see how soft it is with your meat probe. And then, you know, if it's not coming along fast enough for you, you can wrap them in foil, put them back on the smoker for a little while. And if they're cooking too fast, you can just take them off, wrap them in foil, put them in a cooler, let them rest for quite a while too. You know, a couple hours, just like you would a brisket easily. Or you can put them in the oven at like 170 degrees and let them rest and kind of let them sit there as well. So in this case today, we're getting close. We'll be taking off before the sun goes down. Take a look at these gorgeous ribs, see what we're working with. And I hope you try this, because it's a lot of fun. It's really easy. It's by far easier than a brisket if you find good beef ribs. That is the key. Definitely find a good source. You know, you can get some variability. Definitely ask to look at them before you purchase them. So ask the butcher, hey, can you bring out a couple racks for me to choose from? Because if he brings out 3, granted, they might all look good, but probably some are going to look better than others, just like if you're picking out a brisket. So pick out the thickest one you can find, trim off all the fat, because there's a lot of fat on the top of it. So you want them thick as possible. And other than that, if they offer prime grade versus choice grade, prime grade is always better for the most part. So I'm excited to look at this this beef rib. I think it's going to be real good. All right, these are looking nice, right? I think we can agree on that. So Booker is quite interested in these beef ribs behind me, but it's nice. It feels very soft to the touch, which is a good sign. Woo! All right. So these are pretty fatty ribs. These definitely have a lot of fat content in them. You can see that they've been on there for 6 hours, most of it at 275, and they could be left on there longer, no problem. So my point is, these are really easy to do. They're very hard to dry out if you get a good cut, and these look quite nice. Okay, so look at these beauties. And what's nice about these is they do have enough fat in them that you can, even right now, individually wrap these in foil, put them in the oven, keep them at a lower temperature, 170, 180, somewhere in there, and just kind of let them render in their own fat for a while too, and serve them later, which is what I'm gonna do today. All right, time for the meat sweats. Even if it's cold out, we'll see if we can get some meat sweats going on. There's nothing like the outer bark of a good brisket, or in this case, a good beef rib. If you haven't tried this, you gotta do it. It's easy. It's really hard to screw up. Just find a good source for a good beef rib, ask around. Make sure to get something that's kind of thick, has some weight to it, and you should be just fine. Man, those really are good. You gotta try the beef ribs if you haven't. They're so easy, easier than brisket. They're really tough to mess up. Just find a good source, and they'll be a home run every time. And I think I am gonna barbecue a few of those ribs I just made today tomorrow. So I'm gonna save a couple. We'll throw them on the barbecue grill over some charcoal and get the nice crispy barbecue bits going on there. And I can taste it. It's gonna be a good lunch tomorrow, so you wanna tune in for that. Definitely subscribe if you haven't, so you can catch that, ring that bell. And I'll put links up there in the corner for that next video, or subscribe right there, somewhere around here. And we'll see you next time at Seared and Smoked.